Dear students, let us begin a new chapter, Nimai Forever. This is the chapter number 3, and let us connect ourselves with the student and with the topic. So, who or what do you like to spend your time with? Tell the class something about it and also say how it makes you feel. So, dear students, I think that everybody is having different choices, okay, in his or her life, and most of us would like to spend the time with the different people, different activities, and different things. Okay, reflect. Generally, people and pets make good companions. Do you think a tree can be companion too? Give means to support your answer. Yeah, perfectly well. We can make trees our companions, even true friends, because nowadays it is the earnest need of the hour. Because trees, if the trees are saved, so we would be able to save our environment, because it will provide us a particular atmosphere to breathe properly, to live a hygienic life. Next is imagine. Suppose you have a conversation with a tree. What would you talk about? Draw yourself and the tree in conversation. So particular, this is very imaginative question, and if the trees they are able to speak, so we can converse with them. So this is the possible. Sometimes poets, philosophers, they do, but whether they are not able to converse with us, even they can feel, they can breathe, and they are having life. There are some words. Elegant means here stylish and sophisticated in appearance or manner. It means just like a unique one. Erect means upright in posture. Murmur, a soft low sound. Auspicious means favorable, here something good. Indispensable means absolutely essential, means necessary. Tincture means a solution made of a medicinal substance, just like tonic, etc. Liquid, suspension. Pox means a disease caused by virus that may leave marks on the skin. Sentimental, emotional. Materialistic means having a fondness for material possessions. Possession means here property, wealth, etc. Bodily comforts, etc. Severity means harshness. Immovable means here incapable of being moved from one's opinion. Lost consciousness means here fainted, and luster means here radiance, means the beauty, the youth. Dear students, let us read. So, read this story about a boy and his friend, a neem tree. Nimai forever means just like a neem tree. This is a very huge size tree, and it is a medicinal plant, and it gives us even timber also. But particular, its bark and leaves, even its fruits and flowers, they can be used. And it is the best antiseptic also and antibiotic. Okay, read this story about a boy and his best friend, a neem tree. Shamal was looking affectionately means here with love, at Nimai from his bed. He had been in bed with typhoid for a month, and Nimai had been his favorite companion throughout. He could hardly think for a month he could hardly think of a more enchanting means here attractive scene than the handsome and elegant Nimai standing erect, holding his head high against the background of the shining blue sky. He could almost hear his grandfather's voice in the murmur of the small green leaves, narrating how Hindus believe that a few drops of heavenly nectar means here extract of something, fell on the neem tree, which is why it can free people from diseases. So, in the opening passage of this chapter, Nimai Forever, the narrator is talking about the best qualities of neem tree. And when Shamal was just in his bed because he was suffering from typhoid for a month nearly, so he used to look at the tree with great affection, and even he thinks that except Nimai there could be nothing so attractive in his life. So and that Nimai tree means that neem tree was elegant, was erected in good posture, and he used to appreciate within self. So because he had heard almost uh, a story about this tree, about neem tree, by his grandfather, and even he used to feel that the small green leaves they are narrating that Hindus believe even the few extracts of these neem tree, these neem leaves can cure people from their diseases. So I think you are getting all the things told by me. Yes, Nimai was the name of a tree. Possibly their house was the only one in the world where a tree had a name of its own, and what name could a neem tree have in a Bengali home but Nimai? So you can say that this was the first time in his family that a tree had a name, its own name, just like human beings, although it is categorized. For example, mango tree, neem tree, okay, fig tree, etc. But here this neem tree contains a name, and the name was given in Bengali, Nimai. Syamal's grandfather had planted the tree on the day of their Grih Pravesh. Grih Pravesh is the Hindi word, it means the entry in the new house. When the family had first entered the newly built house, although Syamal had not been born then, he felt could see the afternoon vividly. Vividly means here clearly. He could see his then younger grandpa entering the house with a triumphant smile. Triumphant means victorious smile, bearing the neem plant which he had collected from the old gardener of his office in his hand. He had to undertake a lot of trouble to find the old man's house, but he didn't mind it at all. So you can say that Samuel's grandfather had planted this neem tree when they first time got a new house built, and when they entered with their family. So this plant was planted, this tree was planted at that time, and grandpa, when he had brought this neem tree from the old gardener of his office, so he was feeling proud on it, and he had to undertake a lot of trouble to find the old man's house in order to look for, but he didn't mind it at all. It means he took a lot of botheration, still he was happy to plant this neem tree. Samuel could see his grandpa, means grandparent, grandfather, planting it near the gate, his hands full of mud, and grandmother standing near him, blowing the conch shell to extend an auspicious welcome to the new life. Since then, Nimai had been an indispensable, means essential, rather necessary part of their life. Samuel had seen his grandfather sitting under his favorite tree from early morning till almost midday in every season. It was the place for his morning, means upasana. Upasana, this is the name of the prayer. Prayer is called upasana. Okay. The neighborhood remembered his gentle rhythmic voice in Surya Pranam, salutation to the sun. He even had his morning tea and breakfast there. So you can say that Syamal could see his grandfather planting the tree near the gate, and when he did so, his hands were full of mud, and even Samuel's grandmother was standing near him, blowing the conch shell in order to extend some auspicious welcome. It means a good welcome to the new life of the plant. So actually, this was done, and when all these things to be performed well, so this was the mark that the neem tree had become a member of the family, and it was necessary for them. So in this way, that tree was planted, and a kind of relativity, a kind of relation was developed with that tree, just like a family member. Samuel used to see his grandfather in every season that he used to sit under it. He used to take even a tea and breakfast over there, and even he used to offer his prayer, morning prayer also, and even in his very rhythmic voice he used to do so. So class, I think you are getting. Further, in summer, he sat under the tree as the afternoon breeze started to blow. How he loved to see the neem flowers bloom in March and April, the air carrying its light fragrance, and the greenish yellow fruits ripening between June and August. For hours he sat there reading, writing, thinking, or just gazing. Gazing means looking at. The numerous means many or various. Thin young leaves playing in the gentle wind, the birds coming and going, the squirrels running up and down its branches. So in the summer, Grandpa sat under the tree as the afternoon breeze started to blow. He used to enjoy the breeze, and especially in the month of March and April, he used to love to see that neem flowers, and even the air was carrying its light fragrance with the greenish yellow fruits ripening between June and August. So for many hours he used to sit over there while reading, writing, thinking, and looking at different, many or various kinds of thin young leaves which were sprouting, and even the gentle wind was just blowing along with them. So it seemed that the breeze was also enjoying with the leaves of the tree. And even the squirrels also run up. Okay, they used to do so, this kind of playful activity on the branches of the tree. After retiring as the director of a multinational company, Samuel's grandfather had found the greatest pleasure in reading books on India's culture, literature, and on India's vast wealth of tree and plants. He could talk endlessly on the applications of each and every part of the neem tree in Indian medicine, how the seed oil and soap made from it could be used effectively for various skin diseases like ulcers, ringworms, and also to cure rheumatism. Rheumatism, it is a kind of disease of bones. Okay, there is hardness in them. How the bark could be, it means the skin of the tree, bark, outer skin, could be used as tincture. People said it was beneficial against malaria as well. Grandpa always used the fresh, tender twigs to clean his teeth, and the children of the house learned to do so as well. Grandma and mother kept dried neem leaves in books and clothes to protect them from insects. Even some people do so. Okay, so neem begun are leaves of neem fried with small pieces of brinjal was a favorite dish of the whole family and was eaten as a prevention for pox, chicken pox. Okay, so you can see that after getting retired or being retired as the director of a multinational company, Samuel's grandfather found greatest pleasure while reading books on India's culture, literature under the same tree, and he used to sit over there, and he found that this was really a kind of great wealth. So even he had read so many things about neem tree in Indian medicine. So even he had got to know that how the seed oil and soap made from the neem tree, and it can be used also effectively for various skin diseases like ulcer, ringworms, and it can also be used to cure rheumatism. Even the bark, its bark, it means the neem bark, could be used as tincture, and even it was also beneficial against malaria as well. So grandpa always used to have the tender twigs to clean his teeth, just like a brush, and in Hindi it is called datun. Okay, and even the children of the house, they had learnt what to do well. So grandpa and mother, they kept dried neem leaves in the books and clothes in order to protect from some of the insects, just like a cricket. Okay, and neem begun or leaves of neem dried fried with small pieces of brinjal was a favorite dish of the whole family and was eaten as prevention for pox, smallpox. Okay. Further lines are, dear students, when grandpa had smallpox in his childhood, his mother had comforted his burning skin with neem leaves. He often told Samuel, his most obedient listener, that the neem leaves often reminded him of his mother's affectionate touch. So you can say that when grandpa was a small child and he was suffering from smallpox, so in his childhood, his mother used to comfort him by applying a kind of ointment made by neem leaves. So even that affectionate, that loving touch is to be remembered by grandpa even today because of that tree. The shade of the tree was the place where the old man had enjoyed happiness and borne sorrows. After the birth of his grandsons and granddaughters, their uh, namkaran, it means naming ceremonies, and birthday parties had been celebrated there. His love for nature was reflected in the names of his grandchildren, Banani, Banashri, and Shamal. So you can say that all these names were also full of nature. So you can say that in these lines we get to know that the old man, it means grandpa, he had enjoyed throughout his life with happiness, and even he had also shared some of his sorrows of life under this tree. So this tree had become just like a family member for him and for his all other members of the family. Even he had named uh, his children and grandchildren just like names taken from nature, Banani, Banashri, and Syamal. So all the naming ceremonies and other birthday parties had been celebrated under that neem tree. So that neem tree remained intact with them. Further lines are, when his uncles and had married, the new brides had been welcomed under the tree. Not only this, even Samuel's uncles got married, so their brides were welcomed under this tree. On Diwali, the first lamp had always been lit there. This was also a tradition, especially. Samuel would forever remember the day when the news came that his grandma had died of a heart attack. In his uncle's house in Mysore, the old man did not utter a word, but had resorted to his Nimai. He had sat there the entire day like a statue, perhaps trying to gather the strength to bear the heartbreaking loss of his oldest companion. Here, oldest companion means grandmother of Samuel, it means grandpa's wife, who had departed forever. Departed forever means who was no more in this world. So you can say that Samuel is remembering the day when there came a news about the death of his grandmother, it means grandpa's wife. So he said nothing, he could not utter even a single word, except he sat under that tree and just kept on remembering, just kept on restoring. It seemed that even he was trying to gather the strength to bear that heartbreaking loss of his oldest companion. And his end too had come suddenly and silently. Grandpa had been sitting outside even after it was dark, and Samuel's mother had sent him to call his grandmother. At first, Samuel had thought that Grandpa was dozing a kind of taking short sleep, and tried to wake him up. Grandpa, your time for chatting with Nimai is up. His grandfather's head bent down on his chest at Samuel's touch, and suddenly the child realized that his time had come to an end. Indeed, even as leaves from the tree fell on the old man's lap. So, this paragraph also gives us a kind of sorrow or sadness. It means the person who had planted that Nimai tree was no more. So, one day Samuel uh, also got to know that his grandfather, it means grandpa, was no more when he was sitting, and first of all he thought that he was taking a nap or dozing. Then he tried to wake him up, but grandpa's head just bent down on his chest because of Samuel's touch. And then that child realized that it was his time, it means the last time, and there was no life in him. Even he had realized that some of the leaves of the tree they had fallen in his lap, old man's lap. Further lines are Samuel was completely lost in his thoughts, looking at the thin and shiny leaves. It had always been his favorite pastime. He was a sentimental and thoughtful boy, much like his grandfather, but his materialistic father had never liked this. So you can say that Shamal was now completely lost in his thoughts, looking at the thin and shining leaves. It means, as his grandfather used to do, he was also doing the same kind of thing, and it had always been his favorite pastime. And while doing so, it was the pastime for the Samuel. He was sentimental and thoughtful boy. It means Samuel was emotional kind of person, and he was thoughtful also, and he used to like his grandfather, but his materialistic father had never liked this. It means his own father was not liking that his son should gaze on that Nimai tree. Samuel's mother came in with the news of the day. Well, son, I have a surprise for you. Do you know our new car is coming today? So Samuel's mother gave a particular news one day, and she said that, well, son, I have a surprise for you, because you know your new car is coming today. So this was great news indeed, and the boy was highly excited. Excited means you're delighted. He jumped down from his bed and announced. Announced means he declared, I'm not going to lie here anymore. This evening itself I'm going on a long drive with Papa. So this was the day for the child that he was rather happy, and he jumped down from his bed and declared that he was going for a long drive with parent. So when the first rush of excitement was over, his mother tried to break the next news to Samuel cautiously. Your pa says that we have to cut Nimai down as we are going to need a garage for the new car. But the next news was not full of happiness, as his mother tried to break the next news, because Samuel was told by her that his father was saying that they should cut that Nimai tree because they needed a particular place in order to park the car, because they wanted to have a garage. Samuel could not believe his ears. He turned pale because of the severity of the shock. When he was finally able to speak, his voice sounded weak. Mummy, how could you ever think of that? Would you ever think of killing me or Banani just because of lack of space? Don't you remember Grandpa at all? The 14-year-old boy's voice was lost in uncontrollable sobs. Sobs means siskia, okay? Small weep cry. So Samuel began, first of all, he was shocked with the news delivered by his mother, and finally he was able to speak. Then he was sobbing, and he was just explaining whether if there is no space in the family, so whether the parents they would kill their children. So even he began to weep loudly. Mother considered the situation beyond her control and called father. There was a long argument between father and son, but the son could not be moved an inch. How on earth could you think of that? I can still feel Grandpa's presence when I am under that tree. So there was a kind of discussion, there was an argument among the family members, especially with the son and father. So father was saying that they should cut the tree in order to make the garage over there for a new car, but the son did not move. He was determined, and he was arguing by explaining that even he used to feel the presence of his grandfather when he sat under the tree. But this is just your imagination. Your grandfather was my father. I too loved him. We can remember him in 100 other ways. Moreover, where do we keep the car? So father was also saying that he was not only your father, but your grandfather, but even his father. Even he also loved him, and he began to convince him, and he began to say that even Samuel could remember him in different way. But Samuel was uncontrollable and immovable. Father went out in his worst mood, saying that he did not know how his son could prefer a neem tree over a new car. Anyway, the tree cutters would come the next morning. So Samuel uh, was not moved. It means he was determined. Even Samuel was determined. His father went out with the worst mood, saying that whatever happened, next morning the woodcutters really would come. Okay. Only God knows how the boy felt that day, but one of the strangest events of his life happened that evening. The sky had become dark with heavy black clouds. Just as it was time for his father to return, it began thundering outside, and big raindrops started to fall. The scent of wet earth reminded Samuel of his grandfather and how he used to fill his chest with long breaths of this fragrance. So you can say that very amazing thing happened next evening. That evening, even the black clouds they were hovering in the sky, and after that it began to rain with a thunder sound. So this was the season, this was the atmosphere at that time when his grandfather was alive, and he used to smell uh, that fragrance, and he used to fill his chest with long breaths of this kind of fragrance. Further lines are, Samuel was thinking that this would be the last rain of Nimai's life, when a very bright flash blinded him for a second. All the lights went off instantly, and an enormous sound almost deafened him. Samuel could only see that Nimai was burning, and his father was heard screaming from somewhere near the gate. All this was too much for the boy's already weak body and mind to handle, and he lost consciousness. So Samuel was thinking that this could be the last rain, perhaps in Nimai's life also, last day, last rain. When a very bright flash blinded him for a second, यानी कुछ सेकंड के लिए क्या था, ये उसकी आंखें में चकाचौंध रोशनी आई. So all the lights went off the very moment, and very large sound, very huge sound could be heard. It seemed that they had deafened his ears. So Samuel could not see that Nimai was burning. That tree began to burn, and his father was heard screaming from somewhere near the gate. So all this was too much for the boy's already weak body and mind to handle, and he lost consciousness. So he could not bear, he could not tolerate that the tree began to burn. So he was fainted. When he recovered, he found everybody, including his father, by his side. To his great surprise, his father was in tears. Gradually, he came to know that a streak of lightning had struck the tree. Had Nimai not been there, his father was sure to have been struck, as he had been getting out of the car at that time. Even as he was dying, Nimai had not ceased to extend his service to his master's family. So actually what had happened, when Samuel recovered from that unconsciousness, he found that everybody except his, including his father, by his side. To his great surprise, his father was in tears. It means his father was just weeping. Gradually, he came to know that a streak of lightning had struck the tree. It means the thundering, the lightning that had struck the tree. Had Nimai not been there, if that neem tree had not been over there, his father was sure to have been struck. Okay, as he had been getting out of the car at that time, because he was coming out of the car. Even as he was dying, Nimai had not ceased to extend his service to his master's family. So you can say that even at the moment of danger, that Nimai tree had saved the life of Samuel's father. Next morning, Samuel was not in his room. A slip of paper on his table said that he was going out with their old servant Prasad. So next morning, what happened? Samuel was not found in his room, and there was a piece of paper. On it, it was written that he was going with his old servant Prasad. As the hours passed, his parents grew more and more anxious. Samuel's father, uncles, and friends went looking for him at his friends' houses, hospitals, and police stations, but nobody could get any news. The 14-year-old boy and the old servant seemed to have vanished from the city. So even when it was becoming late, as Samuel had not returned by then, so uncle, friends, and everybody was worried, and they were looking for him in the hospitals, police stations, but they could not get any news. As the 14 years old boy had vanished from the city, it seemed that. So it was almost 10:30 at night. Every room of the house was lit and full of people, but nobody talked. Mother could not cry anymore. She was staring vacantly at the burnt remains of Nimai. So this happened. So in this passage we get to know that it was the time of 10:30 at night. Everybody was in the room, but they were keeping quiet. Nobody was talking, and even the light was enough there. And Samuel's mother was only staring. Staring means just looking at continuously to the Nimai tree, which remained after burning. Suddenly, somebody shouted, "He's coming!" Everybody rushed out. Samuel could be seen at a distance, followed by Prasad. The boy had walked a long way, as was apparent by his sweating forehead and dust covered knees. But all this was forgotten because of the big triumphant smile on his face. In his hands, he held a small neem plant like a precious jewel. So, when somebody said that he was coming, so everybody rushed towards him. So, Samuel could be seen at a distance, followed by Prasad, and he was having a very sweating forehead and dust covered knees. Everybody just forgot about all the things because he found that the boy was smiling triumphantly, victoriously, and he was having a small neem plant like a precious jewel in his hands. Further lines are: everybody tried to question him at once, but he only answered his mother, "Mummy, I found Grandpa's old gardener's house with the help of Prasad uncle. I brought this plant in Nimai's place." Samuel's face was illuminated by the lustre that his grandpa had passed on to him. So everybody wanted to ask the question the very moment, but Samuel only answered his mother, and he told or explained her that he had found Grandpa's old gardener's house with the help of Prasad uncle, who was a servant, and he had brought this neem plant from there. So Samuel's face was illuminated, means here delighted by the lustre that his grandpa had passed on to him. He could be able to see grandpa's appearance, or you can say that thinking in that boy. So Jayanti Adhikari has written this, Jayanti Adhikari. Okay. So hopefully students you will get to know. And I hope also that all of you have understood very well. Thank you, students.